May, May 11th, 2026, and we're in Stillwater Sangha. Mm. My name is Brad, and I'm here at Dandelion Acres, Black Duck, Minnesota. And I call this talk, it's a little talk. One of my friends who's a Dharma teacher got ordained the same time as I did, call these Dharmettes, these short talks, 10-minute talks. And I call this one Pond Water. And I call it pond water because I'm a science nerd. I admit it. I'm a science nerd. I started the first ecology club at our Catholic high school back in 1974. I was the president, and don't tell anyone I started the paper collection drive, for the public because it gave me access to adult magazines that people would be recycling. I got first dibs to kind of put those into a separate pile as a teenager. But I also was connected to the earth. I did love science. And I think where that science love came from was from Mr. Gajewski. He was my sixth grade science teacher. And he really was a different kind of guy. It was Catholic school, and he was a lay person. And he just was a really friendly, kind, with obvious limits guy. But if pond water, if science doesn't turn you on, I invite you to use another experience from your own upbringing. And it could be artistic or it could be literary or anything that opened your mind to a new way of looking at the world. Maybe the first time you read a poem by Rumi, or the first time you read a book about another world. Or it could be the first time you looked at a painting done by Picasso or some other artist. Whatever opened your heart to a new way of looking at the world. For me, it was science class in sixth grade because one day I came into science class and there were these glass beakers on the table on our desks. We couldn't afford a science lab in our school, so we did it in our same classroom. But there were these flasks on our desk and little microscopes. And the teacher said, take a look at the water in here. I collected it from a pond yesterday, and I we're going to be looking at it under a microscope. And in sixth grade, I was still scared to death about being in school because my older brothers and sisters had scared the heck out of me about the nuns and priests, Catholic school. And so I was on best behavior because I didn't want to get in trouble. But I wasn't really motivated to learn very much. So I was smart enough that I made it through with okay grades, but I didn't really apply myself very much at that time. But Mr. Gajewski said, take this beaker and just look at it and see what you see. And he said, do you notice a little green tint to it? And he says, that's probably some algae in there. Algae is a plant that grows in the pond. But there's a whole world inside of this beaker that you probably don't know anything about because this was back in the late 60s. And for those of us around my age, we didn't have the internet. So you couldn't just kind of pop in a video and take a look at stuff. So this really was kind of opening the door to a whole new universe for me. You know, we weren't a very well-read or well-studied family that I came from. So Mr. Gajewski was kind of opening a door that I didn't even know existed. And he said, okay, take a dropper and take some water from the beaker and put it on this glass slide, and then put a little cover slide on top. Now put it in your microscope. And before I looked down, I was thinking like, okay, it's water. What am I going to see? What am I going to see? And then I looked into the eyepiece of the microscope and focused. At one point, it just all came into focus. And all of a sudden I saw these algae cells, the little green cells, plant cells. And then I saw these little things swimming across the screen, Daphnia, and I think they're called rotifers. And they were just, some of them were eating each other and some of them were eating the algae. And there was this whole new universe that I might have read about in a book in science class when I was younger, but until I really looked and saw it, I didn't appreciate what was going on. And it really was a marvel to me to see this world that I didn't know existed inside of this very plain looking beaker of water. And I didn't realize it at the time, but as I look back at the time, what I also realized as I looked is I just was in awe. I didn't root for someone to, one animal to win over another animal. I didn't want them to be different or want them to be even different colors. I just was grooving on looking at these things. And it just opened this whole pathway for me into science. Well, that's translated for me into Buddhism because the more I learn, and I got so much more to learn, but the more I learn about Buddhism, it's about applying that kind of awe and wonder in looking at ourselves and looking at the world and really having that observer's eye as we look at ourselves. I have struggled for many years with being a judger. I think it might have come from Catholic school. It might have come from, very strict Italian Catholic parents, being the fourth in line in my family. I have three older siblings and then two younger ones. So I did the same trauma to them that was given to me about judging, making fun of faults, making fun of differences. But I think what Buddhism calls us to do is rather than judge what we see under the microscope as we look at ourselves with mindfulness, because that's the experience I get when I practice mindfulness of self, is that I'm looking in a microscope, looking at all the different parts of myself. You know, there's Brad, which I kind of show the world, but there's all these other parts of me that kind of make up the Brad. And what I realize, mindfulness is not about getting rid of the anger guy inside of me or getting rid of the jealous person inside of me or the yeller that's inside of me. They're all little creatures in the microscope of looking at myself. And I don't even try, well, that's a lie. I was going to say I don't even try to control them. I do try to control them. I don't think it'd be very cool to be yelling in the Dharma hall or in front of a monk or nun or in front of any of you. But what I do try to do is like in our metta meditation earlier, is use those parts of me that I struggle with to nurture me, not to kill them, not to get rid of them, but to see them as strength and allies rather than enemies that I have to get rid of, enemies I have to fight, enemies I have to suppress or even transform. I keep reminding myself that the energy of mindfulness is not the energy of change. The energy of mindfulness is compassion and understanding. And that's the paradox of change. As I accept those parts of me that are not so pretty, when I accept them, that's when they change. I have spent many, 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 many thousands of dollars on therapy, and it's not been very helpful for me. But what my practice does, what Buddhism does for me, is help me understand that we all carry these kind of energies inside of ourselves. And it doesn't mean because everyone does it, it's okay. It means that if everyone does it, we're all in this together. This is what draws us together. We all feel pain and suffering. In different degrees, we all feel anger and hatred. And that's okay. That's part of being human. That's the food for our compassion. I don't mean to be telling you stories that you already know, but Ty said he would never live in a world without pain because it would starve his compassion. That he chose to live in a world of pain so he could feed his compassion. And I think for us, the lesson, I'll own it. For me, the lesson is as I choose to walk a bodhisattva's path, it's not about putting up with the BS of life. It's not about putting up with the angry part of me or the hurt part of me or the traumatized part of me or the little kid part of me. It's about being at peace with having those parts in me and using that pain and suffering to bring compassion to myself and to others, the bodhisattva path. And I think that's the path that many of us are walking, that we choose to, instead of suppress our pain, to embrace it and use the energy of mindfulness to help it nurture us, feed us, be nurtured and fed by us so that we all grow up together. To me, to look inside, to simply observe, take note, and appreciate what's in there, because that is where true enlightenment resides. Thank you.